Okay, so let's unpack this. We live in a world that is just absolutely obsessed with categorization.
Oh, completely.
It's the way our brains are wired, right?
Right.
We want to know, is this person an athlete or are they an artist?
Right.
Is this band, indie rock or they're pop? Are you the guy in the dive bar with the sticky floor?
Yeah.
Or are you the guy in the tuxedo at the symphony hall? We love our little boxes.
Well, it is human nature. I mean, we categorize to understand things. It's a survival mechanism, really.
Yeah.
If we can label something, we feel like we can predict it.
Exactly.
But the problem with those boxes is that they are inherently limiting.
Uh-huh.
And usually the most interesting things, the things that actually change culture,
Yeah.
they happen right on the jagged edges where those boxes start to tear apart.
The friction point.
Exactly.
And today we are taking a deep dive into the story of someone who doesn't just, tear the cardboard. He essentially takes the boxes, sets them on fire, and then conducts a full orchestra while they burn.
That is a great way to put it.
We are talking about Ellis Ludwig-Leone.
A truly fascinating subject. Because if you look at the contemporary soundscape, let's say the last 10 to 15 years of music coming out of New York,
Right.
Ellis Ludwig-Leone occupies a very specific, almost impossible coordinate.
He really does. I mean, most people, if they know the name at all, they know him as the brain behind the band San Fermin.
Yes.
And if you've heard them, you know it's not your typical four dudes in a garage situation.
Not at all.
It's big, it's brassy, it's complicated, it feels huge. But here's where it gets really interesting for this deep dive. That band is just the tip of the iceberg.
It really is.
It might even be a red herring.
Precisely. Because if we limit our view of him to just, indie pop band leader, we miss the much larger, much stranger picture entirely.
Right.
This is a composer who treats a pop band like a symphony orchestra. And conversely, he treats a symphony orchestra like a storytelling device.
Mm-hmm.
He is applying the rigor of classical composition to the chaotic energy of a rock club.
Which is wild. So our mission today, our goal for this deep dive, is to figure out how a kid from rural Massachusetts went from playing competitive basketball.
Which we definitely need to talk about.
Oh, absolutely. I want to put a huge pin in the basketball thing because it's actually so important. But how he goes from that to writing ballets for the New York City Ballet and leading one of the most ambitious touring acts in indie music.
It is a journey into the architecture of sound.
The architecture of sound? I love that.
That is the theme I really want you to keep in mind today as we go through this.
Mm-hmm.
Whether he is writing for a sweaty rock venue or Lincoln Center, Ludwig-Leone is building structures. He is an architect first and a musician second.
Okay, so let's look at the blueprints. We have a massive stack of sources here for this deep dive.
We do.
We've got biographical data, career history, extensive lists of compositions, discographies, interviews, you name it. And honestly, just scanning the list of his works is a little dizzying.
It is a lot to take in.
You have a track listing for a pop album sitting right next to a commission for the Alabama Symphony Orchestra. It literally looks like a clerical error.
Which speaks perfectly to that refusal to be categorized that we mentioned earlier. But to understand how he got there, we have to go back to the beginning.
Foundation.
Exactly. We need to look at the foundation because you don't just wake up one day and decide to write a ballet and a rock album in the exact same week.
Right.
That duality has to be baked in from the start.
Let's do it. Origin story time. So Ellis Ludwig-Leone, born in 1989 in Rhode Island, but he grew up in Berkeley, Massachusetts. Now, I looked this up. Berkeley, Massachusetts is very much not Berkeley, California.
No, it is decidedly not.
Right.
It is a rural community on the South Coast. It's quiet. It's isolated. It's the kind of place where you have a lot of space to think, but also the kind of place where you might get incredibly bored if you don't have an active imagination.
Right, but his house, probably not so quiet, or at least visually loud, if that makes sense, because his parents were both painters and former visual arts professors.
And this is a really crucial detail.
Yeah.
We so often talk about musical families where the dad played jazz or the mom was an opera singer. But growing up in a visual arts household is fundamentally different.
How so?
Well, imagine growing up in an environment where the primary language isn't just English, it's color, it's texture, it's balance and composition. When you are raised by visual artists, you learn to see the world differently from day one. You learn about foreground and background.
I was actually thinking about that when I was going through the sources. Do you think he sees music? Like when he's writing a song, is he thinking in terms of painting?
It is highly probable. I mean, there is a clinical concept called synesthesia, where senses actually overlap.
Right, where you hear a C major chord and see the color yellow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But even without that specific clinical diagnosis, the vocabulary of visual art is definitely there in his work. When you listen to his arrangements, especially in San Fermin or his orchestral work, he doesn't just write a simple melody and slack some chords under it.
No, definitely not.
He layers. He creates immense density. He uses instruments, almost like a painter uses a palette knife.
Oh, that's interesting.
He's adding a sharp splash of brass here to brighten the image, or a wide wash of strings over there to create depth. It's very, very textural.
It's not linear, it's spatial.
Exactly. He is quite literally filling a canvas.
So he's painting with sound. That makes perfect sense given the background. But here's the curveball, and this is the part I really wanted to dig into earlier. He wasn't just the artsy kid sitting in the corner sketching in a notebook while everyone else was outside.
No, he was not.
He played competitive basketball.
Which is a detail I absolutely love because it completely shatters the stereotype of the fragile, brooding, indoor composer.
Right. I mean, I'm picturing this guy practicing these intricate scales on the piano for 3 hours and then lacing up his sneakers and running suicide drills on the court. It feels like two completely different people inhabiting the same body.
It seems contradictory on the surface, yes, but I want to challenge that assumption. Because if you really think about it, there is a very strong parallel between the two.
Really? Between piano and basketball?
Absolutely. Both require intense, repetitive, almost grueling discipline. You don't get good at classical piano by just feeling the music, and you don't get good at basketball by just showing up to the game.
Yeah, that's true.
It's drill work, it's repetition, it's building muscle memory until the action becomes instinct.
The grind is exactly the same. But I want to pause on this basketball detail for another second because I think it's more than just a fun fact about his work ethic. We have a note here from one of the interviews in our sources where Ludwig-Leone talks specifically about the role of the point guard.
Right. And this is where the psychology of the composer really starts to reveal itself. If you think about the point guard in basketball, they aren't just out there scoring points.
No, they're running the play.
They are the floor general. They have to see the spatial geometry of 10 massive people moving around the court in real time. They have to know where everyone is supposed to be before they even get there.
Which is exactly what a conductor does.
Exactly. A conductor or a composer writing for 8 distinct instruments is managing traffic. They are anticipating the crash before it happens. They are controlling the flow of time and energy. Ludwig-Leone has this great quote where he compares the flow state of a fast break in basketball to the flow state of navigating a really complex polyrhythm in music.
That's so fascinating because it completely strips the elitism out of the classical side of things.
It really does.
It turns the orchestra into a team sport. It makes the conductor the point guard.
And I think it explains the aggression in some of his music, too.
The aggression.
Yes. We tend to think of the genre chamber pop as delicate, tea and doilies, polite little string sections.
Yeah.
But if you listen to a track like Jackrabbit, which we will definitely discuss later.
We are absolutely talking about Jackrabbit.
That track isn't delicate. It's athletic. It's muscular. It practically sweats.
It's a contact sport. The brass section isn't asking for permission. It's driving the lane hard.
Exactly. There is a real physicality to his music. It drives. It has momentum. It's not passive background music. And don't forget, while he was doing the classical piano thing and the competitive basketball thing, he was also doing the very normal teenager thing.
Which is?
Playing in a string of high school rock bands.
Oh, right. The classic garage band phase. The loud, messy, let's completely annoy the neighbors phase.
Exactly. But notice the duality starting even back then in high school. By day, he's studying the intricate mathematical structure of classical piano. Bach, Beethoven, the strict rules of harmony.
Yeah.
But by night, he's probably banging out power chords in a rock band where the only real rule is be as loud as possible.
It's two different worlds.
And most kids eventually choose one lane. They either get serious, go to the conservatory and drop the rock stuff, or they buy a van and abandon the classical training.
Yeah.
He didn't choose. He just kept widening the highway so he could drive in both lanes at the exact same time.
And speaking of that highway, we have to talk about a really critical pit stop. So he's 15 years old. He goes to a summer program at the Berklee College of Music in Boston. And he meets a guy named Allen Tate.
This is what I would call a true catalyst moment in his life. Without this specific meeting, the rest of the story we're talking about today probably doesn't happen.
Allen Tate. If you know San Fermin at all, you know that voice.
Oh, you can't miss it.
It's this deep, incredible baritone. It sounds like it's coming from the bottom of a very dark well. And they met when they were 15.
15 years old.
Yeah.
And consider the odds of that for a second. You meet someone at a summer camp as a teenager, and that person ends up becoming your primary creative partner for the next 2 decades.
It never happens.
Usually, summer camp friends drift apart after a few months of texting.
It's wild. It's like meeting your Lennon or McCartney in sophomore homeroom.
Yeah.
But let's talk about that voice for a second, because it's not just a cool voice. Why was Tate's specific vocal register so important for what Ellis wanted to build musically?
Let's go back to the architecture metaphor again.
Okay.
If you are building a massive musical structure with violins, trumpets, synthesizers, and female vocals, all of which are usually operating in a much higher sonic register, you need a foundation.
You need a floor.
You need something to anchor the whole thing to the earth. Allen Tate's voice is that anchor. It is steady, it's low, and it's incredibly resonant. It allows Ellis to build all these frantic, high-energy, high-pitch arrangements on top of it without the song just floating away into the stratosphere.
So Tate literally provides the gravity for the music.
Exactly. And it highlights the importance of those early networks. But I think it also tells us something profound about Ludwig-Leone's loyalty and his artistic vision. He recognized something essential in Tate's voice, even when they were kids. Or perhaps they just clicked personally. But either way, he held on to that connection. Tate became the definitive voice of San Fermin.
So let's recap where he's at. He's got the visual art background from his parents, the athletic discipline from basketball, the rock band experience, the classical piano chops, and now he's got his lead singer on speed dial.
Right.
But he doesn't just start the band and hit the road immediately. He goes to Yale.
And this is where the classical composer identity really solidifies for him. He attends Yale University and graduates in 2011 with a degree in classical composition.
Which is serious stuff. Yale isn't exactly a garage band rehearsal space. That's heavy academic rigor. That is learning every single rule before you're allowed to break them.
It is very traditional in many ways.
Yeah.
But what stands out in the source material we reviewed is that he wasn't just sitting quietly in a lecture hall analyzing Mozart's scores.
He was busy.
He was incredibly active. He began writing music for his own bands and various ensembles while he was still studying. He was taking the theoretical concepts from the classroom and testing them in real time.
He didn't wait for the fancy diploma to start doing the actual work.
Not at all. And that immense drive led to another massive trajectory-altering connection. While he was still a junior at Yale, he started working as an assistant for the composer Nico Muhly.
Okay, for those listening who might not know, can you give us the deep dive on Nico Muhly?
Gladly.
Because why is that name drop so important? To the average person, that name might not mean much, but in this specific musical world, it's a huge deal.
Nico Muhly is an absolute giant in the contemporary classical world, but more importantly for our story, he is essentially the prototype for the modern genre-less composer.
The guy who breaks the boxes.
Exactly. He is known for exactly the kind of thing Ludwig-Leone eventually does, blurring the lines completely. Muhly has written grand operas for the Metropolitan Opera, but he's also worked intimately with massive indie bands like Grizzly Bear, The National, and Bjork. He exists in both of those worlds completely comfortably.
So getting to assist a guy like that, that's not just an internship, that's a masterclass in how to build a career.
It is an apprenticeship in the truest, oldest sense of the word. But let's look at the timeline here and what the Nico Muhly connection implies about the New York music ecosystem.
Okay.
It's not just that he got a good job. It's about who holds the keys to the city, right?
It's about access.
Precisely. Muhly is essentially the central hub of a very specific, very influential wheel in Manhattan. To sit in that room, to see exactly how Muhly works day to day, it teaches you the kitchen sink aesthetic.
What do you mean by that?
If you look at Muhly's work, how he effortlessly integrates electronic beats with a Renaissance lute or a traditional choir with a synthesizer drone, you see the exact blueprint for what Ellis would later do with San Fermin.
Ah, I see.
He learned by watching Muhly that there are absolutely no illegal combinations of instruments.
So it's permission. Working for Muhly gave him the permission to be weird, to try things that shouldn't work.
Yes. And on a purely practical level, it bridges the gap between being a Yale student who writes academic papers about music and being a working artist who actually survives in the cutthroat ecosystem of New York City.
Right, because you have to pay rent.
Exactly. It established a lasting professional relationship, but more importantly, it likely showed Ludwig-Leone that a career straddling these two seemingly opposed worlds was actually financially and logistically possible. He saw someone doing it successfully.
Okay, so he graduates Yale in 2011. He's got the Ivy League degree. He's got the master apprentice mentorship with Nico Muhly. Now comes the turning point, the real origin of the sound, the cabin in the woods moment.
Yes, the Banff residency.
Yes, so he takes an artistic residency at the Banff Center for Arts and Creativity in Alberta, Canada. Now, I looked this place up while prepping for this.
It's stunning.
It is gorgeous, but it is secluded. I mean, it's away from the noise of New York, away from the academic pressure of Yale. It's basically just giant mountains and a lot of snow.
And we really need to pause on this because on paper, an artist residency sounds like a luxury vacation.
Right. It sounds amazing.
You go to Canada, you look at some beautiful mountains, you write some nice songs. Sounds incredibly relaxing, right?
Sign me up tomorrow.
But it is definitely not a vacation. Have you ever actually tried to be creative when you have absolute zero distractions?
Oh, it's brutal.
When there is no internet, no phone ringing, no friends to meet for coffee down the street, it's actually terrifying.
It's the classic blank page problem, but the blank page is your entire life for 6 straight weeks.
Exactly. Isolation can be a powerful tool for a composer, but it is a crucible. When you strip away all the daily inputs, the traffic noise, the phone calls, the social obligations, you are left with just your own internal noise, and you have to sort through it.
And I read in the background notes from the sources that he spent weeks up there, essentially entirely alone in a small hut. No cell service, just him and a keyboard.
And that kind of silence is deafeningly loud. This is the crucial moment for the San Fermin album. Up until this exact point, Ellis is a student. He's constantly surrounded by professors, by Nico Muhly, by the bustle of Yale and New York. Suddenly, he's in the middle of the Canadian wilderness, and he has to ask himself the scariest question an artist can ask. What do I actually sound like?
When no one else is in the room.
Exactly.
And the sound he found up there wasn't quiet. That's the grand irony of this whole thing. He's in this silent, pristine, snowy landscape, and he writes an album that is explosive. It's chaotic, it's dense, and it's full of dozens of voices.
I think that is the key psychological insight here. He was writing the company he wished he had.
Oh, wow.
He was populating that lonely cabin with imaginary friends. He wrote the baritone, the soprano, the sweeping brass section. He literally built a massive party in the middle of nowhere specifically because he was lonely.
That is such a cool way to look at it. The album is a direct reaction to the silence. It's him fighting back against the isolation.
And this is a very crucial distinction for you listening to understand. He didn't get a bunch of guys together in a damp rehearsal room in Brooklyn and jam for hours until they found a cool song.
Which is how 99% of bands start.
Exactly. He went to a secluded place and he wrote the entire album. He composed it on paper like a symphony.
That's a huge difference in methodology.
It is a defining difference between a traditional rock band and a project led by a classical composer. He wrote the score first. And then, once the music fully existed on the page or in his early demos, he had to go out into the real world and find the specific people capable of executing it.
Which brings us to 2013. The self-titled album San Fermin is officially released on Downtown Records, and people absolutely loved it.
Critical acclaim is the phrase heavily used across our sources. It really resonated. It hit a nerve in the indie music scene.
But because he wrote it first, and because it was this massive, complex, orchestral pop sound with all these imaginary friends, he couldn't just hire a drummer and a bass player and go play a club.
No.
He had inadvertently created a logistical monster.
The music completely demanded more. This prompted the formation of an 8-person touring band.
8 people. In a van. Let's just talk about the grim economic reality of that for a second.
It is an absolute economic nightmare.
Most indie bands are a duo or a trio for a very specific reason.
Math.
Yeah. Fewer mouths to feed at the diner, fewer hotel rooms to book. Everyone fits in one vehicle.
Precisely. To tour with 8 people, plus all their instruments, plus the sound gear means you are splitting every single guarantee check from a venue 8 ways.
Which leaves basically nothing.
You need 2 vans or a very expensive bus. The profit margins are razor thin, if they exist at all. Artistically, however, it was a strict necessity.
He couldn't compromise.
Right. If you want those sweeping brass textures, the intricate female and male vocal interplay, the live violin, the complex percussion, you need actual physical bodies on stage making those sounds.
It speaks directly to his composer-first mentality. He simply wasn't willing to compromise the architecture of the sound just to make touring cheaper or easier.
He essentially prioritized the integrity of the composition over the profitability of the tour. That is an incredibly rare move in today's music industry.
So let's look at what that sound actually is. We've got 4 main studio albums listed here in the sources. The self-titled debut in 2013, Jackrabbit in 2015, Belong in 2017, and The Cormorant Parts I and II in 2020.
And notice the progression and the constant control there. He is the sole songwriter and producer for all of them.
The genre label gets thrown around a lot in the press clippings we have here, chamber pop, indie pop. But let's really unpack chamber pop, because it sounds like something you'd listen to while drinking chamomile tea with your pinky out. But San Fermin rocks pretty hard live.
It is a fusion term, certainly.
Yeah.
But we keep throwing it around, so I want to really take that apart for the listener. Because usually when you mix an orchestra with a rock band, it sounds like a cheap gimmick.
Yeah, like when a legacy metal band plays with a local symphony.
Exactly. It just sounds like 2 entirely separate things glued together. The oil and water problem.
Right, the violin sounds like it's just awkwardly floating on top of the drums, not actually part of the groove.
Precisely. But Ludwig-Leone does something fundamentally different with his arrangements. He treats the human voice as an instrument, and he treats the physical instruments as voices. In the source material, specifically in the liner notes for the album Belong, he talks extensively about interlocking textures.
Help me visualize that. What does interlocking mean in this context?
Okay, imagine a standard rock song. Usually the electric guitar strums a big distorted chord, and that sound fills up all the sonic space in the middle. It's a wall of sound.
Sure.
In Ellis's writing, that one guitar part might be completely split up. The cello takes the low end of the chord, the trumpet takes the middle stab, and the violin takes the high fluttering notes.
Oh, wow. So the chord itself is actually 3 different human beings standing 10 feet apart from each other on the stage.
Yes, it creates this incredible 3D audio effect. But it's also incredibly fragile. If one person misses their cue by a fraction of a second, the whole chord falls apart.
That's terrifying.
That's the chamber element of chamber pop. The absolute reliance on the entire ensemble to create a single, unified sound. It's high-stakes musical Jenga.
That makes the live show sound incredible to watch. You're literally watching them construct the music in real time, piece by piece.
Exactly. And if we look at the trajectory of the 4 albums, you can really see the evolution of this interlocking concept. San Fermin, the debut, is the grand thesis statement.
Right.
It's operatic, it's introducing all the characters, it's very theatrical.
And then comes Jackrabbit in 2015. We mentioned this one earlier.
Jackrabbit is the panic attack.
It really is.
It's faster, it's much more aggressive. The athleticism we talked about with the basketball analogy is all over this record. The themes are about running away, hiding, being hunted.
Then Belong in 2017.
That one feels like the identity crisis. It's a bit more song-focused, a bit more vulnerable. It's asking, where do I actually fit in all this?
And finally, The Cormorant in 2020.
This is a massive double album. It feels like walking through a memory palace. It's ghostly, very atmospheric. It circles back to some of the sweeping themes from the first record, but with a lot more maturity. It's less about the initial bang and much more about the lingering haunt.
It's a hell of a run of records. And throughout all of this, the collaboration is the key. We mentioned Allen Tate from the summer camp days, but in 2020, they actually took it a step further. They founded a record label together called Better Company.
Yes, with Allen Tate and their longtime manager, Thomas Winkler. And this is highly significant for his career arc. It shows a definitive shift from just being the working artist to becoming the industry creator.
Taking control of the business side of the art.
And Better Company. Even the name itself suggests a curatorial approach. It suggests they want to actively surround themselves with other artists they respect. It's about creating a new, sustainable ecosystem. Maybe one that treats independent artists better than the traditional music industry machinery does.
So he's got the critically acclaimed, successful touring band. He's got his own record label. For most people, that's a full career. That's a job well done, time to retire to the beach situation.
Absolutely.
But for Ellis Ludwig-Leone, that's seemingly just his day job.
This is where we pivot to the other side of his brain, the classical composer.
The other lane on the highway.
Exactly. And I really want to emphasize this for you listening.
Yeah.
This isn't a side hustle.
Right.
This isn't some bored rock star releasing a vanity project of synthesizer noodles because he has too much free time in the studio. This is a robust, highly respected, separate career running entirely parallel to the pop band.
The list of institutions he's written for is genuinely intimidating. I mean, we're talking the New York City Ballet, the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra, the Brooklyn Youth Chorus, the Attacca Quartet.
These are absolute top-tier cultural institutions. They do not commission hobbyists. They commission serious, proven composers.
Let's look at some of these titles, because I feel like titles in classical music can be, well, let's be honest, kind of boring.
Very academic.
Yeah, Symphony No. 4 in G major. Total snooze. But Ellis, he's giving us titles that sound like short stories or cool indie films.
They are incredibly evocative. Take the piece he wrote for the Alabama Symphony Orchestra back in 2015.
How to Fake Your Death.
Yes. How to Fake Your Death.
I mean, come on. That's a movie I want to buy a ticket for right now. For an orchestra piece, it immediately sets a tone before a single note is played. It's noir. It's mysterious. It's got a dark sense of humor.
And it suggests a specific narrative. He isn't just exploring a musical key abstractly. He's telling a distinct story. It subverts the rigid expectation of the symphony hall. You walk in expecting something formal and stuffy, and he hands you a pulp crime novel.
Oh, look at the piece for the harpist, Lavinia Major.
Shadowy figures.
Again, highly visual, very mysterious.
And then there's his chamber music, Processional for a Doomed Wedding.
That is easily my favorite title on this entire list. It's so inherently dramatic, but processional for a doomed wedding. It makes you wonder immediately, is the music incredibly sad? Is it chaotic? Is it actually funny?
It suggests a complete subversion of tradition. Because think about it. A wedding processional is supposed to be joyous, orderly, hopeful.
Right, walking down the aisle.
By adding the word doomed to the title, he twists the entire conceptual framework. It connects right back to that chamber pop idea, taking a very traditional established form and injecting it with raw, modern anxiety. It's pure irony.
It also shows he's not taking himself entirely too seriously. Or rather, he's taking the music very seriously, but he's allowing the audience to have a fun entry point that isn't just dry music theory.
Yes.
You don't need a master's degree from Yale to understand the vibe of a doomed wedding.
Which is absolutely key for accessibility.
I also noticed some of the choral works have really, really specific titles. Lying in a Field, age 67, and Singing in a Chorus, age 14.
Those were commissioned for the Brooklyn Youth Chorus.
What stands out to you about those specific titles?
The pinpoint specificity of the ages. Age 67. Age 14. It strongly suggests a deep focus on time, on the process of aging, on the unreliability of memory. It grounds the somewhat abstract, airy sound of a large choir in a very specific grounded human experience. It forces you to think about the long timeline of a single life.
It's cool because he's writing these pieces for a youth chorus, literal kids, but the title reference is being 67 years old. There's a beautiful juxtaposition there between the performers and the subject matter.
And we see that same avant-garde edge in other titles, too. Look at Speech After the Removal of the Larynx. That was written for the Attacca Quartet.
Whoa, that sounds intense. That sounds like body horror.
It is highly experimental. It pushes boundaries. It suggests he's using string instruments to explore the very limits of communication or the physical loss of a voice. It shows he's not afraid to make the audience feel deeply uncomfortable.
We also have to talk about the ballet connection, because that's a whole different world. He collaborates frequently with a choreographer named Troy Schumacher.
Yes, on works like Common Ground for the New York City Ballet and the Impulse Wants Company for Ballet Collective.
Writing for dance just has to be fundamentally different than writing for a rock band, right?
It requires a completely different rhythmic sensibility. When you write a song for a rock band, you are usually locked tightly into a groove. The drummer drives the bus. It's usually 44 time. The goal is to keep the audience's heads bobbing.
Right, keeping momentum forward.
But when you write for ballet, you have to actively visualize human bodies moving through space. The music has to physically breathe with the dancer's lungs.
Wow.
It has to have open space for physical expression. Dancers count music in a very specific, almost elastic way. The fact that Ellis can toggle so easily between the rigid, metronomic drive of a pop song and the fluid, expanding dynamics of a ballet score is a massive testament to his sheer versatility.
He's also done a lot of work specifically with the harp. I'm seeing the name Lavinia Major pop up a lot in these source lists. Suite for flute and harp, night loops.
The harp is a fascinating instrument for a composer like him. It's incredibly resonant, it's highly textural, but it's also surprisingly rhythmic. It fits his painting with sound aesthetic absolutely perfectly.
Yeah, it can do a lot.
It could be sharply percussive, almost like an acoustic guitar, or it can be completely fluid, like water washing over the track.
And he's not just composing his own stuff from scratch, he's also highly sought after as an arranger. He's doing work for other indie artists, like Wild Pink, on their critically acclaimed album, A Billion Little Lights, and for bands like Pure Bathing Culture.
That is the ultimate mark of a musician's musician. When other established artists who are incredibly talented in their own right, when they need that extra layer of texture, that harmonic complexity, that indescribable magic sauce they call Ellis.
He's the guy you call when you want to make your standard indie rock album sound like it was recorded live inside a Gothic cathedral.
Or when you want to give a simple song immense cinematic weight. He essentially brings the gravity to their projects.
So we've established he's a sponge. He soaks up visual art from his parents, athletics from the court, classical training from Yale, rock music from the garage. But who are the people he's actually listening to? Who's on Ellis Ludwig-Leone's personal playlist?
The list of influences provided in our source material is, well, it's eclectic, to say the very least. It is a Venn diagram of genres that really shouldn't touch, but he forcibly overlaps them.
Let's run through it. Sufjan Stevens is first.
That one makes perfect logical sense. Sufjan is essentially the modern godfather of this kind of orchestral indie movement.
Yeah.
Massive arrangements, deeply emotional storytelling, a banjo playing right next to an oboe. If you like San Fermin, you almost certainly have Sufjan's Illinois or Age of Ads in your record collection.
The National is next on the list.
Again, very logical. The National, especially the work produced by the Dessner brothers, expertly bridges that indie rock and modern classical divide.
Right.
It's highly emotional, it's driving, and it features those iconic baritone vocals from Matt Berninger. You can draw a very direct straight line from them to San Fermin.
But then we get to Miles Davis.
And here's where it gets truly fascinating. Because why Miles Davis?
Yeah, San Fermin does not sound anything like Kind of Blue.
Not superficially, no. But think about Miles Davis's core approach to harmony. Think about his incredibly deliberate use of empty space. Think about the sheer complexity of his underlying chord structures. And most importantly, think about reinvention.
Miles never stayed in one box for more than a few years.
Exactly. He went from cool jazz to modal jazz to wild fusion to electric funk. He essentially burned the boxes every time he got comfortable. Ludwig-Leone likely admires that fearless, restless approach to musical structure and change, and the jazz concept that the silence between the notes is just as important as the notes themselves.
That makes total sense. It's about adopting the attitude of the music, not just mimicking the sound. Okay, then we have the heavy classical hitters, Charles Ives and Benjamin Britten.
Charles Ives is the great American experimentalist. He famously layered entirely different clashing songs on top of each other to create this wild cacophony and invent new textures.
Like two marching bands crossing paths.
Precisely. He captured the messy, chaotic sound of marching bands in town squares. Ludwig-Leone's work often feels like a modern digital interpretation of that layering pristine pop sounds with rigid classical structures to see what sparks fly.
And Britten?
Benjamin Britten was an absolute master of vocal writing and 20th century opera. He inherently knew how to write for the human voice in a way that was instantly dramatic and deeply theatrical. Given how intensely vocal-heavy San Fermin is, with the constant male and female dynamic interplay, and considering Ellis's choral works, Britten is a very clear, direct ancestor to his style.
And finally on the list, Paul Simon.
The quintessential American songwriter. Because you can have all the sweeping violins and harps in the world, but if the core song, the underlying melody, the actual lyric, if that isn't solid, the whole grand structure falls apart. Paul Simon is the absolute master of the foundational craft of songwriting.
So if you put all these wildly different people in a blender, Sufjan's raw emotion, Miles Davis's structural complexity, Ives's fearless experimentation, Britten's vocal drama, and Paul Simon's tight storytelling, you get Ellis Ludwig-Leone.
He is standing right in the center of that impossible Venn diagram.
Oh.
He takes the clear storytelling of Paul Simon, adds the dense texture of Britten, and drives the whole thing forward with the nervous energy of the National.
It's a pretty powerful cocktail.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I think it perfectly explains why his career looks the chaotic, beautiful way it does. He isn't trying to just be one of those things. He is actively synthesizing them all into something new.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what does this all mean for us, for you listening?
I think Ellis Ludwig-Leone represents a very necessary modern archetype of the composer. For a very long time, culture told artists to just pick a lane and stay in it.
You are high art or you are low art.
Exactly. You're classical or you are pop. You play dive bars or you play concert halls.
And he just said, no thanks, I'll do both.
Exactly. He completely refuses to be siloed. He uses the complex tools of the orchestra to tell accessible pop stories. and he uses the raw energy of rock to invigorate stale classical forms. He proves, definitively, that you don't ever have to choose between intellectual complexity and emotional accessibility.
That's really inspiring, honestly. Whether you're a working musician or just someone trying to figure out your own complicated career path, you don't have to choose between the basketball part of you and the piano part of you. You can integrate them.
Integration is absolutely the key word. He integrates his influences, his rigorous training, and his disparate interests into one cohesive whole.
I want to leave everyone listening with a final thought to chew on. We talked about that incredible title earlier, Processional for a Doomed Wedding.
Yes.
We live in an era heavily dictated by algorithms. Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, they all want to predict exactly what you like based on what you already clicked.
They want you to be predictable.
They want to play you the exact same song over and over again, just slightly different. They want to put you in a neat little genre box so they can sell targeted ads to you.
The algorithm absolutely hates ambiguity.
Exactly. But artists like Ellis Ludwig-Leone, they are the ambiguity. They are the glitch in the system. They are the surprise. So my question for you is this. In a world of sterile playlists that categorize everything by incredibly narrow genres, are artists like Ludwig-Leone the only ones truly keeping the surprise, the doomed romance, if you will, of musical discovery alive?
That is a brilliant question, and definitely one worth pondering today.
Go listen to How to Fake Your Death and then immediately chase it with a loud San Fermin track. See if you can hear the hidden connection. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Until next time.
See ya.